Hello and welcome, folks, to Next Steps Employment Center's next topic on how to get employers to notice your resume online. I'll be a presenter, Shilpi, employment specialist. Please have a pen and a paper ready for any notes and exercise that we'll be doing shortly. Our agenda for this topic is how do employers notice online applications? So we'll touch on that and we'll move on to how do we optimize when you're applying online, optimize your resume when you're applying online, and where can I find some resources to get you started. So we will look into all these and most likely help you to see what happens behind the scene once you apply online. So let's look into that. Let's dive. So a lot of people might be in the same boat that you might be job searching for quite some time, um, but you haven't had much response from employers. And I'm sure you must be wondering what's going on. Sometimes people tend to self-doubt. Is there anything lacking? Some skills that I need to do. I'm not sure what's happening. So let's look into a few aspects of what could be possible and take it from there. So let's see where we can head into. Um, People might even say, why aren't employers noticing my online application? So that's a big thing. So before we even get into, let's look into, you know, some steps that happens right after you send that application. Now there are lots and lots of resumes that, on an average an employer gets, like could be hundreds of resumes. So it's really a process. And because from um, the candidate's point of view, it's really quite easy. All you have to do is, click one button and it's gone. But from the employer's side, it's an overload. There's lots and lots of resumes that they get inundated with. So now they have to figure out, how to manage all that. Whereas as a candidate, well, you've sent quite a number of resumes and you're kind of thinking, I haven't really heard from employers what's going on. Now, what happens is when all these applications, including your application, when it lands in employer's website, what happens is something called ATS. Some of you might be familiar, some maybe not. So we'll kind of look at it. It's called Applicant Tracking System. Now this software deals with all the numerous um, emails and numerous applications that comes. It kind of deals with managing all that, sorting all that between, candidates who are really strong, those have lots of qualifications versus those who have little or none. So the software kind of helps sort them, and that's one of the big steps in it. And as we are talking about the whole ATS system, let's look into further as to what is it, and how does it work. So applicant tracking system, in short, as we call it, ATS, they're almost like you can, I can give an analogy of a virtual HR assistant. It kind of helps and supports the employer to kind of through the hiring process. And the software, the job of this ATS system, the software is to collect information, which is obviously your resume, your application, and it kind of helps organize it in a way as to who has skills, those who have less or more, and it kind of sorts it in that way. So even before a human eye actually sees your application, it's the machines that are kind of scanning them and going through and kind of separating those that will be moving forward versus those that would probably not go any further. So, there are times when people send lots of applications and they wonder what's happening because they do have um, the experience and the expertise, but they still wonder what's happening, and they have created a really good application. So we'll look into some of those things. I will try and give some advice, some suggestions to you as to how you can approach this when you do apply next time. Now, how does this ATS system work again? Um, if you imagine search engines, just like there are so many different varieties of search engines, there are many different softwares within this ATS system. So there are different softwares which different companies use, and all these different softwares, they have their own way of kind of searching for applications, and we'll look into it further later on. Um, and the ATS system, they also, it can be used in social media also to search for any candidates that an employer might be interested to. So there's many ways they kind of look into. Further to it, how it actually works. Some ATS system also do what we call keyword search. So they could be searching for certain keywords, which could be under their skills or their job description. So whatever the job posting has, and there's keywords under the skills or the description part, they'll try and look for those words in your application. And another thing that they work with, they call filters. So what they do is they look and try to match locations or education. Do you have, a certain college diploma or a university degree? It's kind of trying to match, or location. Where did you work in the past? Was it local, or was it some other place? So the filter kind of picks up those um, uh, uh, you know, words to kind of showcase that, yes, depending on how the employer is trying to, find out the candidate that they really want. If they want somebody who has maybe previous work experience in Toronto, so they can, put filters to search for word Toronto. So like that, they have, and there are so many different types of softwares under this ATS system. Um, Now, how common do you think this is, this whole, using ATS system in companies? And if you can, have your pen and paper handy, just write down, what do you think, what percentage of large companies do you think use ATS for hiring purposes? So maybe what you can do is pause uh, the slides for a moment and just jot down what your thoughts are, like what percentage comes in your mind, and then you can see the answer right here. So it's 90%. So most large companies these days are using um, this applicant tracking system to kind of assist them in the hiring process, which is a huge number. So that also tells us that if candidates are applying in larger organizations, then that's something that they have to make sure that they work um, towards getting through successfully through the ATS system, and we'll look into that more now. Now, the question is, how do you optimize your online resume for employers so that they can, um, see your resume? Actually, a human eye can see your resume, and not just, the computer, because eventually, once it sorts through the ATS system, those candidates who the software thinks are strong candidates actually land up um, with the HR, and then they kind of look at it. So the first thing is, it's really important for you to understand um, how important job description is. So just reading it carefully, going through it, once or twice to kind of get a good understanding of what it is that they're looking for, um, and and then deciding, um, you know, am I qualified to apply for this job? Because there are so many people, like I mentioned earlier, that they, may or may not have um, the right qualification, and they still will send resumes because it's so easy. It's just a click, and it's gone. So a lot of people apply regardless of whether they have the qualifications or not. So you'll have to look at that also. And then optimizing the entire resume for the ATS system. So not just the heading. Heading is important because you want to make sure that it matches with what the description or what the posting position talks about, but also the entire resume. So it's really, really important, and we'll look into in detail how to do it further. Um, Starting from the objective, a lot of people tend to write quite a long, almost like a paragraph of their objective. So try not to do it when you're moving forward with sending online resumes, because all those wordy paragraphs, the ATS system is not able to kind of look into it and pick the right words. It's best to keep it very simple, um, straightforward, the position exactly that matches with the job description, and leave it like that. So keep it simple and clean. And then making sure you're maximizing the readability, which means you're actually, your language that you're using in your resume is very um, clear and consistent, and try and avoid using acronyms. So example would be, instead of writing MBA, you could perhaps write, master's in, um, uh, the whole form. How do I optimize my resume further? So some more tips. Just be consistent with your format. It's really pertinent. Making sure that everything is very clean and clear. Um, the keywords, that's one of the important things. Keywords to match. So when you look at the job description, try and see, are you using the keywords from the job description into your resume? Because when you're preparing it, um, the language is very important, and that's what the ATS system looks for. So try and use those keywords. When you're looking at a job position, so next time when you look at it, typically, in your mind, what percentage do you think of the qualification do you need to apply for this position? So how qualified should I be, if that's the question? So I have three options for you. So again, if you can just take your pen and paper and just jot down, in your mind, um, what's the percentage of the qualification do you need to apply for this position? Is it typically 100%? Is it 70 to 80, or 40 to 50? And here's the answer. It's 70 to 80%. So if you are in that category, feel free to apply. Don't worry about, oh, it's not 100%, so I can't apply. It's nothing like that. Making sure if you cover most of it. Of course, if a person is applying for a nursing position, they have to have, because it's a regulated profession, they have to have the certification and uh, their registration number. So that's a must. Other than that, somebody just can't say, oh, I have everything else, I just don't have the registration number, but I can do all the other necessary work. Well, that doesn't qualify you. So you'll really have to think in a practical, logical manner. But other than these um, jobs that are regulated, you can look at it and see if you can say yes to most of what they're asking for, then absolutely go for it, and apply. If they're asking for master's degree and you maybe have a college, go for it, because there's nothing for you to lose. So as long as 70 to 80% is covered, you're good to go. Then back to the keywords, it's really emphasizing that how important it is to making sure you match it. And the reason is the ATS has strings match, because they have to match the search strings and the automated filters. So unless the keywords match, it's not gonna move forward. It's they the search string will look for certain, a combination of words, and if it's not there, it's just gonna filter you through to the no pile. And same for the filters. So it's really important for you to making sure you have clear and information which is out there, so that it's readable, and all the important information is right there. Now some softwares, ATS softwares, they accept synonyms, they take into consideration, but others look for exact keywords. So the older versions of ATS, they look for exact keywords, and it'll be hard for you to know exactly which company uses the old version or the newer softwares, unless you can find out, which might help. But other than that, it's better to just use the exact words, um, and that way, you're keeping it simple. You're just kind of making sure that you're providing what the company needs and the information that they need to make a decision. When it comes to font, there are two different types here. There's a sans serif font and there's a serif font. So it's recommended for you to use sans serif font, and you'll see there are a number of different fonts under sans serif. You can use anything that's really clear and comes out clean and it's readable. But they prefer, a lot of the ATS system prefer sans serif font, just because it scans much better, and it remains readable even though it's gone through their scanners. Um, because sometimes as they go through the scanners, they digitally change it. So it's recommended that you use that font style. And when you're doing your bullets, again, try to keep them on a circular shape symbols or something very similar. Same reason, the ATS kind of, when it scans it through, it recognizes the circular more than the other shapes, which it might just reject. Then we come to headers and footers. That's another important part of your resume. So making sure that um, those parts, typically a lot of people might use it, but when you're sending it through online, we would recommend not to use headers and footers, because again, there are ATS systems that um, won't be able to extract information that are important, again, for the employers to know, and then you might miss out an opportunity for that interview. So we would recommend to just have it in a clean, simple format. Um, Also, uh, making sure that you're demonstrating your accomplishments in your resume, which is so important. Again, connecting it to what the job description is asking for. So that's again a very, very important message for you to remember. What expertise do you bring in? That must be shown. It's really important through your accomplishments. Now that you have some idea about this process, um, you know, um, can you write at least two things that you can do differently when you apply online next time? So, you can pause um, the slide at this point, and just write down um, in your paper two things that you could do differently when you apply online. And now we'll share some nuggets of information with you to kind of, make you aware what's happening. So, uh, 62% of companies using ATS, they admit that some qualified candidates are likely being automatically filtered out of the vetting process by mistake, which means basically that's what the Career Arc and Future Workplace Survey um, coded on. And that's because although the softwares that these employers are using, they are assisting them to kind of sort between the qualified and the and not so qualified candidates, but sometimes some really strong candidates fall through the crack and they end up in a no pile just because the way they have written their resume and depending on whether the ATS system is the older or the newer version, it was not able to extract the information that was needed for them to kind of pass through and you know um, be one of those get into the pile of to be looked by HR. So that also happens, and that can be really frustrating when somebody's applying for jobs thinking, I had all the qualifications that the job description asked, and how is it that I never got a call? So that could be the reason, because depending again how what type of software they're using. So from the candidate's point of view, what we have to remember is making sure that we showcase what value are we bringing to the table, and making sure the skills match in the application. And and I know it's time consuming, which means you have to basically tailor each resume, but that's the reality. We have to, in order for anybody to kind of pass through the online process, this is part and parcel of what we have to do. So you have to bear that in mind. And now some more additional information to share. It said that 98% of job seekers are eliminated at the initial resume screening, and only the top 2% of candidates make it to the interview. So that's according to the president of Job Market Experts. So that's huge, which tells us that all these, hundreds and thousands of people who are applying, a very small portion of those people are actually called for an interview, uh, which brings it to a point then, you know, where where am I spending all my energy? So if you're spending most of your energy, sending online applications all day, or most of the day, then maybe it's time for you to perhaps look into some other strategies, um, reducing, yes, you're sending some online applications, but also looking into what are the other ways I can apply for jobs. And for that, there are additional topics that you could look for in our Next Steps Employment Center workshop presentations that'll help you again to do that. But certainly it's an eye opener for a lot of people who are wondering, what's going on, because now you can see it's only 2%. So that's a very small number of people who are actually picked. And even from them, from that 2%, when they review, um, a few only pass to the first or the second round of interviews. And that's how things will continue. So this is the reality of how things are progressing, and in future also, now with the artificial intelligence kind of also coming into play, and they're assisting to develop some softwares, the ATS systems, improving their ability to hire in much more intelligent and in much more smart way. They're trying to kind of overcome some of the downsides of having that ATS system, because it doesn't eliminate sometimes some good candidates. So they are kind of improving on it, um, but it's gonna um, keep it'll be part and parcel of the HR moving forward. So it's something that we have to get used to when we're applying for any online positions. Now, where can you find some resources to get you started? Because this is a short kind of a presentation to just kind of get you thinking as to what was happening. Why is it that I wasn't hearing much from employers? So um, today I was just giving you some ideas to what could be one of the reasons. There could be several others, but today we were focusing on one of the reasons as to why it was happening. And you can research and get lots and lots of information through some tools, and the list, some of the names I have given here, you could certainly check them out. There's JobScan, there's Resume Worded. Um, you can look into some information there. LinkedIn also has a lot of information on application tracking system, and so does the Balance Careers. So hopefully this will get you started on diving deeper into it and kind of looking into what are the do's and don'ts for moving forward when you're applying online. Um, Now that you know some information going forward, you know that even before the HR personnel will see your resume, eh, your resume has to go through this whole software, and we have to make sure that it goes through successfully, and you know lands up on employer's desk, because that's the ultimate goal. And I'm sure you'll be able to do that. And if you have um, any questions um, uh, for how further to do it, you can comment or ask further questions in my email. It's right here, or you can visit our website. I hope this will enable you to look into things in a different way, and get a head start for some more online applications, and some tools to help you do that. Thank you, and have um, good luck for your next job application. And if you need further assistance, again, feel free to connect with us. Thank you.